Kia ora koutou and welcome back to What's in Your Kete. I'm Taylor, your host for this week's episode, and joining us is a very special guest from Turtle Island. Today we're joined by Delbert Anderson, an acclaimed multi-award winning jazz musician from the Navajo Nation. Delbert and his group, the Delbert Anderson Quartet, are set to perform at Te Ahurei Toi or Tāmaki, the Auckland Arts Festival 2025. To start off, I wanted to give our listeners a bit more of an insight into who Delbert Anderson is. If you could share a little bit around where you're from in Turtle Island.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Yate Delbert Anderson Yanisha, Bita ni Nishna Klasche Bushichin, Kinta Cheatney Dashiche, Toda Cheatney Dashinella. My name is Delbert Anderson. I'm from the Diné Navajo tribe from New Mexico in the United States. And I was born on the Navajo reservation. My mother's clans in our indigenous culture is from the Folded Arms people, and I have three other clans as well. But our mothers are what we pronounce first, and that's Bitsatni, Folded Arms. And so I'm here, and I'm a trumpet artist, and I lead the Delbert Anderson Quartet. So thanks again for having me.
How does your performance blend Native American traditions with jazz?
Yeah, in my culture, we have a set of songs called the Diné spinning songs, and spinning songs are basically songs that teach us a life lesson, and that lesson can be something very serious or it can be very humorous, very funny. These songs, they're considered social songs, and the way our Diné people, believe is Diné basically means people, like five-fingered beings. So not just Diné people, but it means sort of everyone. And these songs belong to everyone, and so anyone can make a spinning song as long as it teaches someone else something, about themselves or about their culture. So I took these songs, the general sound of the spinning songs, and I was able to be inspired by those sounds and sort of make spinning songs that are they might not have words in them. They're more instrumental, just sound only. But before I play the songs, I usually tell the story of what it's about and how the song came together, and it's basically a lot of experiences that I had, or it might be related to indigenous knowledge or wisdom that was passed on to me from elders. And so that's how I sort of incorporate, my culture into this music. The fun thing about it is everyone in the band is they're allowed to play whatever they like, whatever they want. So I don't necessarily write for everybody. All I bring is the melody, sort of the song, the story, and everyone else gets to fill in with their personal likings and what they were brought up with. And so I think that's what keeps the song very special, the music, because it's not only my culture, but it's also non-indigenous culture. We come from different backgrounds, but also our drummer's Rastafarian, so he comes from that background as well. And so we are able to combine all of these sort of teachings and cultures and personal interests and likings. And yeah, that's kind of what comes out.
What first drew you to jazz in the first place?
Yeah, so I think in general, the practice of improvisation is what brought me to jazz music. It was in when I was in fourth grade. There was a jazz trio that came to our school for an assembly to demonstrate instruments, because in fourth grade that's when we get to pick an instrument and go into band at that time. And so the guy that was playing at the assembly, he was a trombone player and he was playing in a trio, a jazz trio. And his very last song, he said that he was going to improvise, and he ended up playing just a ton of notes, very impressive. But something that he did was he turned his music stand around. So he wasn't looking at any music. And, I thought that was really cool. And so I immediately the next day wanted to play trombone, but I wasn't able to play it. And so they told me to go to the trumpet. and I went to the trumpet and was able to make a couple notes on it. And everyone said, you're a trumpet player now. So, it's something that I really believed. And the first thing I did when I got my trumpet was I tried to imitate that trombone player, and I tried to play even though I didn't know how to play. I just wanted to pretend that I was improvising. And so that's what really caught me. And later on in sort of grade school, I believe about sixth grade is when I actually got introduced to jazz. And that's when I first started seeing, there was opportunities to solo. And so I was really excited to do that finally, because there was a lot of basics involved before getting to that point. And yeah, so that's what really brought me into jazz, was just watching someone improvise. Yeah.
Would you say with your performances that you do now that you still have the ability to improvise a little bit, or would you say it's more of a methodical approach in terms of how you and your quartet perform?
Um, well, we do have a basic jazz form, which is we play the melody, we improvise, and then we play the melody again. That's sort of just the standard of jazz. However, um, I would say in every song, I would say about 75% of it is improvised. So we are only basically have a concept of the idea. We all know how the melody sounds, and we don't all the time play the melody the same way, but we know it enough to where, like, oh, he's playing the melody even though it might sound different than we played it before. So we're definitely getting to the idea of concept, where, oh, this is just a concept of the melody, but yet we still we're all aware of when we're playing the melody or when we're not playing. So when we're not playing the melody, we know we're in improvisation mode. And so but when there's hints of the melody coming in, or that, we start to kind of just communicate with each other, either by listening or by looking at each other. And at that point, it's kind of, follow the leader, or just, leaving space to where we can quickly move in any direction we want to. So it's really, it took a while to get to that point, but I think the band right now, the quartet, we do have new personnel since I started back in 2013. Um, about 2 years ago now, we had a whole new personnel. So Robert Muller on keys, on keyboard, Khalil Brown on drums, and Evan Suter on bass, and then myself on trumpet. So that's the new personnel of the quartet right now.
And speaking of your quartet, you touched a little briefly on it that you started back in 2013. But with your new lineup now, I'd love to highlight a little bit for our listeners about how you ended up coming together with your new lineup for your quartet now.
Yeah. So 2013, I started a trio, which was just bass, drums, and trumpet. And that was with Mike McLuhan on bass and Nicholas Lucero on drums. And around 2015, I kind of had a hip hop phase where we turned into a quartet, but we had MCs. We had James Bakotis on vocal, and also for a while we had Christopher Mike Bidta, which are both Native American rappers. And we had those two about for a year to about 2 years. And then, like I said, recently, maybe 2003, 2023, I had a residency in Santa Fe, and because the trio wasn't able to make it, I had to hire locals in order for them to just to make traveling a lot easier. And I ended up playing with Evan Suter, our bass player, and Robert Muller. They were kind of the host band with me that entire month and a half, almost 2 months. And we just, we had great chemistry together. And at the same time, some of the old trio began to kind of seek other career paths and kind of move towards other directions, because of scheduling, and it's very difficult to have a be a musician and have it as a career. So there was a lot of things like that. And when they were kind of on their way out, I had these guys kind of on their way in, like they're more wanting to play more. And Khalil, the drummer, I had toured with him about 7, 8 years ago, and I was just really impressed with his playing. And I told him I'd always keep in touch with you, and if by any chance a spot opened, I'll call you back. And when the spot opened for drums, I called him, and he said, "Sure, I'll tag along." So it kind of all worked out, and so we've been together ever since. And yeah, we're still trying to find ourselves because we're all from different areas. It's very hard to come together and practice, but during residencies or during other gigs that we have booked, we usually have a day to get together and play and talk about new music and whatnot. So that's kind of how we're handling it right now. But it's been great, and the music is really fantastic. Yeah.
I just wanted to also kind of segue into something you just briefly mentioned with new musicians on their way in. And I know that another program that you work on outside of your music is the Builder Band program, helping young jazz musicians who are interested in getting their career started, but kind of infusing that with Navajo Native American traditions. And was just wondering if you could speak a little about that, please.
Yeah. So one thing is, sort of the common, what is said often about music, especially music careers, is that they don't exist and it's very hard to get into. And a lot of times, because it took me, and I'm still trying to build my career after 11 years. I'm still working at it, and it's gotten a lot better, a lot easier. But also, there was just a lot of things that I noticed that many local musicians, those who are starting out, are not really aware of. So I started to implement some of these things that kind of go overlooked, and I made a class out of those things, and I started teaching it to sort of younger, kind of high school level students before they go into college. And we talk about all kinds of different things, not only music, but we talk about the creativity, we talk about improvisation, but we also talk about life skills, like trying to financial stuff, even lessons, how we have to be students all the time, and just kind of these things. It's sort of a foster nurture, like a mentorship kind of program. And the students get together with people that they don't know, and they are to form a band together. And by the end of the when the classes are over, it's usually about a 6 to 8 week class. As soon as that's over, they will perform together and set up their own show, and book their own show, basically. So it's really interesting, kind of watching them through that process, and kind of telling them some of the things that I didn't learn until way later on. And so that's sort of how we do it. But it's also a really great program because I get to talk a lot about my Diné culture while we're teaching. And so I use a lot of sort of indigenous ways of teaching, kind of like learning to play by ear or memorizing things. We sort of get to explain how to treat people, how what our indigenous culture says about treating people, fairly, humbly, and all these kinds of things. And it really brings up a really good sort of emotional, like, citizen. And so that's kind of the goal. And I know the bands that have been, the program started in 2016. It's still going on, and there's maybe 2 or 3 bands out there that are still playing that are part of the program. So it's really neat to see. Yeah.
Kind of coming back to you now, I know that you've highlighted quite, um, you've mentioned how much you are talented with the trumpet, but I was wondering, outside from that, do you experiment with any other kinds of music, or do you play any other instruments, or are you a vocalist yourself?
I play a little bit of drums, and I used to sing when I was younger. Those are the only other kind of things that, well, I don't really do those anymore. But I also do a little bit of freelance work, to where I might play in like a pit orchestra, or I might play trumpet for like a reggae band or something like that. So there's other things that I like to do, but most of those things are just friend related. If they're my friends and they ask me to play with their bands, I do that. I do a lot of different recordings for other people, add trumpet onto their albums, that kind of thing. So those are some of the other work, and also teaching sort of private lessons with other trumpet players. So those are kind of my other forms of, I guess, work outside just performing. Um, but I'm always composing and always coming up with new projects, and I think I have about 3 or 4 projects that are touring right now, doing different tours. So but it's all within music, and it's all the foundation is in indigenous culture. So um, yeah,
No doubt. And maybe if we could also just touch a little bit on, you just mentioned that you've got some other projects that are touring at the moment. I'd love for our audience just to have a little bit of an insight around what are some of the other Kaupapa projects that you've got going on outside of your quartet here.
Yeah, so within the research area, I have two projects. One is called the Long Walk, 1,674 days, and that's basically how long the piece takes to complete it. So it's a 4.5 year piece, but it's all about awareness of the tragic event that Diné people went through called the Long Walk, and it sort of just retells that story of what really happened, instead of the story that our government tells, which is very opposite, from what happened. But so I had that project. Another project on the research side is about a Diné cornetist who lived from 1879 to 1950. His name was Jacob C. Morgan, and he was just an amazing cornetist who traveled all over the world, who had a music career very early on, and he just had a huge impact on his community, because he was an educator. He was even a minister. He was a carpenter and also a band teacher. So he was always helping someone out, during his entire life. And for that area, that time period, it's kind of rare that a Diné person was doing a lot during that time. So he ran into a lot of things that today even we have trouble with, but he was able to get through it all. Those are on the research and on the theater end. I have a project called Honjon that's coming out fairly soon, either this year or next year. But it's about the Navajo creation story, and it has a script, it has dancing, music, basically like a normal theater production would. And that's beginning right now. It's on development phase, so I've been doing a lot of residencies with it and writing scripts and meeting with different people. And I guess you could say on the medical side, kind of like the healing side, I have a project called the Spirit Coalescent, which is how we learn to heal ourselves from the landscapes, and that's based on indigenous knowledge as well. So we have different types of touring where sort of those art pieces are touring in galleries, but it's also a performance show where we play, and it has dance, music, and poetry. And so all of those connect, and then we have our touring, our touring group, our quartet. So we have, yeah, so those are some of the more hot projects that are alive right now. And there's others on the back burner that come back here and now, but now and then. But yeah, it's how I stay busy pretty much. Yeah.
Bringing things back here to Aotearoa, I know that, as mentioned, you and your quartet will be here very soon to perform, and I wanted to ask you, for audiences who will come and watch you perform in Tāmaki Makoto, what would you like the audience to take away from your performance?
Well, other than just having sort of the entertainment side of the music, I hope the audience can really attach to the music that we're playing through the storytelling. Um, it's not necessarily a big component of what we do, but before every song, I do mention what the song is about and how it came about and how it's related to our indigenous culture. And most of the time, just the audience reviews that I've heard was, they said were able to connect to the song a lot more after hearing the story of it. So I really hope there's a lot more connection, and I really hope that they focus not only on the sound and the what's coming out from the band, but the meaning of it too. So that's sort of what some of the main missions that I'm about is just in general creating awareness that our indigenous culture exists, and we have this type of knowledge and wisdom, and it can be very uh, I guess it can be it can be looked at as healing as well, especially with what times we have in front of us and what we're going through right now. There's a lot of ways that our indigenous people heal themselves through some of the hardest times in history, and so I hope to kind of shed some light on those areas so that people might be able to take it away and use it on their own, use it on themselves. Yeah.
And I think as well, for us here in Aotearoa, we have a strong Indigenous art scene as well. And, we're very much looking forward to seeing what you're bringing from your community. And also, I guess, moving into my next question, I wanted to ask from your perspective, what connections or similarities do you see between Maori music traditions and the sounds of your own heritage from the Navajo Nation?
The older the song gets, I found like some commonalities even from other indigenous cultures all over the world. Some of the oldest songs, they don't have language in them, it's just pure sound. Also, there's this pentatonic type scale, minor, it could be major. um, it sounds like a lot of early indigenous music has has that sort of scale within it. A lot of them customs. I know that from meeting the indigenous tribes of New Zealand, because we have met before in Vancouver, and we were able to all kind of have the protocols and how we all first introduce ourselves and bringing gifts to one another. I know we all share that kind of meet and greet kind of thing, so that was really interesting to see coming up, and just knowledge of like the ocean interstates, what the elders call it. The different paths on the ocean, and during what months are best to travel, like all of that information. It seemed like it was very universal with indigenous people all over the world. So I think we, not only within music, but yeah, a lot of similar areas. And I was talking with an elder from New Zealand who I met in Vancouver, and they said, this wasn't the first time that they met Diné people, Navajo people. They said they met Diné Navajo people far back when, as well, and so they didn't really call it like the first time meeting, but it was just a meeting later on that they everyone said that their ancestors met the Hawaiians and all these, the Asian and the Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, all of these tribes have already met due to the ocean currents and some of the traveling that has been done. And so it was really neat to see that everyone seems like it was more of a reunion rather than finally meeting for the first time. So I don't know, I have a lot of just respect and just very happy feeling when everyone comes together like that, because it's maybe 100 years ago our tribes already had crossed paths at one time and met. So yeah, it's just amazing to see the other cultures, and especially New Zealand.
Is there anything that you hope to see or do or experience while you're here?
I haven't really did a lot of much thought into it yet, but I definitely would want to. I don't know, but maybe visit a place of importance, um, from the indigenous tribes. Whether it might, I don't know what it might be. It might be like a mountain or a volcano or some sort, or just something that I hope to see that has a lot of meaning. Maybe like for us. We have the four sacred mountains in our reservation, which are a part of our creation story, and so it's always neat to take visitors and show them these mountains, and that and so perhaps something to that idea of hoping to be um, sort of invited in to see something that's very prominent within the tribe.
I know you've mentioned previously that you've got several projects on tour now, but I also just wanted to give you the space to just to speak on any other kind of new projects that you've got coming up, or any other tours that you're going to be doing with the quartet, or anything else like that, like what's on the horizon for you.
Yeah, well, I do know that hopefully by the end of this year or sometime this year, we're going to be releasing a land album, a land healing album. And back in 2022, we were able to tour 5 national monuments that the Bureau of Land Management helped us book. But we also met with all the indigenous tribes of those lands, and we were able to create 2 pieces in collaboration with each indigenous tribe. So it's a 10 track album, and it's basically to the idea of the Spirit Coalescent project I talked about, which is how we healed from the land as indigenous people. And so that's what we're working on. I think we're going to be going into the studio hopefully within the next few months, and hopefully try to release that by the end of the year. But that's kind of what's on the finish list right now. We got to get going on that. And so yeah, and all of these sort of projects, all the albums that I created, they all come from they're all on my website, delbertanderson.com.
Ngā mihi nui kia koe, Delbert. Thank you so very much for sharing your time with us today. Thank you very much for listening, and come back soon for another episode of What's in Your Kete.